Hey guys, welcome back. If you're sitting out there and you're doubting the momentum that we're seeing in the memory sector right now, if you think that we haven't turned the corner and gotten into bullish momentum, I don't know what else to show you if you still have doubt, because all of the signals are as clear as day in the marketplace right now. The demand signals, all of the analyst sentiment, it has changed. We have shooken off the bearish momentum and we are getting back into a bull run with the memory sector. What we saw today was an extraordinary session across all the members of the Fab Five, because the broader indexes were flat to down today. The S&P 500 was down by about a half a share point. The NASDAQ was down by about 0.3 overall. But the memory and the storage sector, they executed a massive high volume breakout. Just take a look at what we saw from the Fab Five today. If you look on the board, you can see here in my watch list here on Market Watch, Micron was up over 4% today, a $40 gain on the stock. Guys, it broke the $1,000 barrier again. It got up to about 1,024, 1,025 at one point today. Pulled back to about 1,011, but we held our ground above 1,000. It is a strong sign for the stock, and we're seeing continued momentum in the after hours. SanDisk was up over $100 again. I feel like every time it trades right now, I'm saying that. It was up over $145 a share, almost 9% today. The stock closed at $17.86, but in the after hours, it's over the $1,800 mark. We saw it over $1,800 today during trading action as well. It pulled back, but we're seeing almost another 1% in the after hours. Western Digital was up almost $30 today, 5.34%. The stock closed at $536, and we're seeing relative flatness in the after hours, but it was a strong momentum day for the HDD players, because we saw Seagate. It got up over $1,000 a share today, $21 on the board. It pulled back a little bit right at the close, and we're seeing it just about $9.93 right now in the after hours, but an incredible day for Seagate as well. But here's the thing I want to show you, because I mentioned to you the broader market was down today, but capital was very selective of where it rotated to, and memory was definitely one of the sources. But we're also seeing it move into some other areas where we see significant constraint in the market. I talked about the semiconductor equipment companies last night. I told you, keep your eye on Applied Materials. And look what Applied Materials did today. It was up over 5.5%, $28 for the stock. $5.35 a share right now. I think it'll continue to move right now. That stock was undervalued at $5.07 based on everything it delivers to the market and the demand that we see in the market. But it wasn't just Applied Materials. TSMC was up today. ASML was up. KLA was up. Lam Research was up. Tokyo Electronic, Teradyne was up. All of the infrastructure players, the picks and the shovels, were up today because there is a significant constraint in that market. And then finally, let's talk about the connectivity players. We have talked about those optical players. They had another fabulous day. We're seeing continued strength from Lumentum, Coherent, Applied Optoelectronics, Corning. Just take a look what you saw today. Lumentum was up over 4.5%, $43 gain. The stock is at about a $9.70 a share. Coherent was close to an 8% gain today, $25. The stock is at $3.51. Applied Optoelectronics is over the $150 mark for that stock, another 3% gain on the board. Corning was up over 4%, and we see Marvell up over 5.5%. The great news is they're all continuing the momentum in the after hour as well. So this tells me one clear signal overall, that the market today, it was selective of where the capital rotated to. It wasn't just that we were buying everything AI. Investors put their money today into memory, storage, connectivity, the infrastructure plays. It was very selective of where it bought. It didn't buy broadly across AI. So that's a key signal for us here to keep our eyes on, because it is clear now that the market is increasingly differentiating between the AI narratives in the marketplace and the physical infrastructure where scarcity actually exists, where those bottlenecks or those constraints in the market are. Those companies are continuing to get rewarded overall. So today I want to talk about why the memory sector bounced the way it did, because it wasn't just a bounce back from the July volatility. We've seen strong momentum for a couple weeks now, and it's very clear, as I mentioned, we are back in a bullish momentum or a bull run with these stocks. But today's action was driven by three themes overall. We saw one, that Washington tightened the geopolitical moat. They kind of had some key comments to a hyperscaler about not making sure they don't pursue the actions with Chinese memory companies, and that helped boost the US players. We're also seeing Wall Street raise its earnings framework for the entire sector, but particularly with Micron and SanDisk. And finally, we got some extraordinary demand signals from very key AI developers that I want to walk through today and show you those three themes that move the sector today. And I think they'll continue to move the sector in the days ahead. But if you haven't done it yet, before we jump into those stories, make sure you hit like, make sure you subscribe to the channel. Guys, I want you to be part of Market Signal. Let's keep growing this channel up over 50,000 subscribers and beyond. Let's keep making sure our community has the broadest reach across all of YouTube. So if you haven't subscribed yet, do me a favor and subscribe to the channel. All right, let's get started. Let's take a look at that first story that I mentioned, which was the geopolitical moat that from just some of the influence that Washington had today that I think drove or lifted the stocks, particularly in the morning overall. This article here, we'll call it out. It's on Market Watch. And you can see as I scroll down, it talks about right here that Trump administration has reportedly told Apple not to buy memory chips from Chinese companies, even as the supply crunch has sent their products, the prices of their products higher. We know for weeks now that Apple's been floating out these reports that they're testing chips from CXMT, from YMTC, to address some of the shortages and the price hikes they have with their consumer products. Well, today, Howard Lutnick, the U.S. Commerce Secretary, told the Wall Street Journal that the Trump administration is not in favor of that move. And that signal right there was a bullish sign for the sector, and that accelerated the growth we saw earlier today. If you jump down, you see the Ava Trade, Simon Freeman, their trading specialist, said that Apple's turn to the Chinese memory chips was the one scenario that could have genuinely dented the U.S. supplier's pricing power over the next few years. Therefore, the reported pushback from the Commerce Department takes this serious long-term threat off the table for Micron, SanDisk, and for some reason they say Western Digital. I think they're confused and think that Western Digital is still aligned with SanDisk because I really don't see a threat for the HDD market with the Chinese competition, but they did say Western Digital overall. But they went on further and said, we know that Dell and we know that HP have been kind of flirting with the Chinese companies as well and using some of their chips and their products across Asia. And what Howard Lutnick said is that they very well could face pressure as well and pressure to move away from those Chinese products. And that also could create a secondary, broader structural tailwind for the memory sector, for the chip names overall, more than we just saw. This will not eliminate Chinese memory competition across, out of the market, but it does potentially limit CXMT and YMTC's access to some of the world's most valuable Western companies. And that matters enormously when the global supply is already tight and as constrained as it is. So that's why we saw the memory sector just kind of take off when this news hit the wire. And I talked about this the other day. I just think we're going to get into a scenario where the Chinese companies are going to have a very nationalistic approach. We may very well see the same exact approach here with the Western players, where they have a bit more of a nationalistic approach. And that would be a great signal for Micron. That would drive significant pricing stability for the company overall. But let's jump into the next story I want to talk about, which is some of these price earnings that we're seeing are just kind of Wall Street adjusting the earnings framework or kind of the valuation for these stocks. And you see here, I'm going to show you three stories that all kind of tell the same thing. But this one on investing.com is from Bernstein. It says the investor day makes us feel more bullish about SanDisk. Guys, that investor day from SanDisk was probably the one catalyst that we just needed to get the momentum over the top with this sector, because I see it over and over again in every article, just referencing what SanDisk showed and how that validates the entire sector and how it's validating Micron and Western Digital and SK Hynix and Seagate. So I couldn't be more happier with what SanDisk delivered last week and how it's just helped lift the entire sector. But I'll show you what Bernstein is saying. Bernstein, they reiterated the outperform rating and the $3,000 price target on SanDisk. They say overall we came back even more convinced of the SanDisk bull thesis, and we reiterate outperform in our price target of $3,000. And they also mentioned that high bandwidth flash is not in the model and could potentially add a significant upside to the target and to the company overall. That's the first one from Bernstein. The overweight, the outperform rating, the $3,000 price target. But we also saw this article on why SanDisk stock is getting its mojo back. I saw this on Barron's today. I thought it was kind of a cool title, but it goes through a very similar story. It says the shares are on a 5-day winning streak. Last week, we know, ending Friday, there was a 35% jump in the price movement last week for SanDisk. And it says the strong run is set to continue this week. So it definitely continued today on Monday, up 9% today. But they also call out it's still down, even where it closed on Friday, it's still down 25% from the record high that we saw right towards the end of June there. But there was a piece here at the end that I just thought was interesting. First off, we see JP Morgan. They resumed coverage of SanDisk again with an overweight and a price target of $22.50. They dropped that on Friday. Their analyst said the company was uniquely positioned to continue to capture the continuing structural inflection in demand for NAND flash driven by the rapid growth in AI inference. But this piece here at the end was interesting to me because the average price target right now for SanDisk is $2,200, just over $2,200, implying a 35% raise from Friday's closing price. And 81% of the analysts covering the shares now rate them as a buy. That's the highest buy rating ratio that SanDisk has had since it spun off from Western Digital last year. So it was an interesting stat for me. I haven't heard that before, but I think it also just gives us another indicator of how the sentiment has changed for this stock. And truly, just as the title said, how SanDisk stock is getting its mojo back. And let's take a look at what they said about Micron. Very similar. Bank of America sees Micron's earnings per share topping 230 by fiscal year 2030. Calls peak fears overblown. So if we go through it, Bank of America, their analyst Vivek Arya, he reiterated a buy rating of $15.50 price target for Micron. That's my price target as well, exactly. So that makes me feel good. While recently adding the stock to Bank of America's US 1 list, the firm's highest conviction ideas. The current stock price represents over a 50% upside from the current levels of roughly 10.14 here. We know it closed at 10.11 today. And they argue that the consensus is anchoring to the wrong earnings model, that Micron's structural earnings power is fundamentally underappreciated in most of the valuation models. So Arya, he applies the same assumptions to Micron that they essentially applied to SanDisk after the investor days. And they arrive at a fiscal year 30 earnings per share range of $200 to $250, implying a 30% plus earnings per share compound annual growth rate from fiscal year 2026 through all the way out to fiscal year 2030. The key debate right now, they say, is whether Micron remains a peak cycle earnings story or is it transitioning towards a structurally higher earnings power model. The answer is the latter, according to Arya. Memory has historically been viewed as the most cyclical segments of semis, but SanDisk Analyst Day suggests that the industry may be entering a more durable phase. That last sentence, I think, just summarizes exactly what I said earlier. Like, this Analyst Day from SanDisk has just changed the mindset or the thinking of so many analysts out in the market right now. When they say the Analyst Day has suggests the industry may be entering a more durable phase, that's a great sign for money. So those are clear signals and signs today that we are entering kind of a next phase of the memory sector, and it is a great phase to be entering. Because there's one more thing that I want to talk about before the end of the video, because if you remember in the beginning, I talked about a few extraordinary demand signals from key AI developers. I want to show you some demand signals from not only Elon Musk, Goldman Sachs, as well as Anthropic that were dropped today. In my opinion, it strengthens the memory story. It strengthens the sector overall. So let's jump into this article from investing.com. It actually was the focus of SK Hynix and why the stock was surging today. But if I scroll down, you can see here in the first highlighted paragraph, it says the primary ignition for the memory sector overall came from Elon Musk, who on Friday replied to a post by the futurist Peter Demons. And he said that memory, not compute, is the rate limiter of the agentic AI era. And in his words, he said, if few realize this, And this amplified the thesis that he already articulated on his Q2 earnings call with SpaceX, where he described memory as the single biggest bottleneck in AI expansion, with demand growing roughly 10 times faster than supply. The other signal we saw was Goldman Sachs, because they released projections estimating that agentic AI will consume approximately 120 quadrillion tokens per month by 2030, representing roughly 24 times the token usage that we have seen in early 2026. And they're saying that this is the reason why the deal that we saw between SK Hynix and NVIDIA that was initially seen as a reason to take profit and to sell off, they're seeing this now. It's being viewed as a long-term demand anchor and really a signal of strength, not only for SK Hynix, but for the entire memory sector overall. And then if I jump over to the signal that we saw from Anthropic, they reported with Bloomberg today that Anthropic saw its revenue grow more than 14 times in the second quarter from a year ago. And this is driving optimism for memory and storage players. Anthropic's revenue reached more than $11.5 billion in the second quarter, compared to just $787 million it recorded in the same period the prior year. And Klein, who went on to say, who is the author here for Jordan Klein for Mizuho, Klein went on to say that the buy-side consensus is that Anthropic's annual recurring revenue will reach between $75 billion and $100 billion this year. And he noted reports that the company could see this figure jump to between 180 and 200 billion by the end of next year. And that would turn into a lot of spending on AI chips and a lot of spending on memory components, networking, and other data center hardware, said Klein. So this revenue assumption from Anthropic is a bullish flag, a bullish signal for the entire memory sector overall. So guys, those are a few signals that I wanted to share before we wrapped up the video, because I think they just show us again that we are getting into a bullish momentum with this sector. All of the signs in the market point to it and tell us that. Actually, before we close, let's just take a look at what we're seeing in the after hours right now with the other stocks. So if I jump over to Micron, we can see right now it actually pulled back. It's right about the $1,000 level. So it's down 1% in the after hours. I don't know if this is a sign that we'll see a bit of profit taking at the opening bell tomorrow, but this 1,000 level is probably the battlefield we're going to have with Micron moving forward before we see the next leg up and it gets closer back to the all-time high of 1250 we saw. If I jump over to SanDisk, we can see SanDisk is also a similar phenomenon, down by about $35 and change right now, trading at 751 in the after hours. So let's see how this evolves overnight. Let me scroll down and just to see if it continues, if it's continuing across the HDD players as well. So Western Digital is down by 1.74 in the after hours, and Seagate is down over 1%. If I actually scroll up, let's just take a look at what we're seeing from, scroll down the other way. What we're seeing from the Asian providers right now, we're actually seeing some really nice performance out of the Kospi. So SK Hynix is up by about 5%. Samsung up almost, a little over 1%. Let me just check on Kioxia before we close up the video, see what Kioxia is doing in the Nikkei 225. Kioxia, where is Kioxia? Here it is. Kioxia is down by about 3.5%. So about a little bit of a mixed signal from our Asian providers, but we'll keep our eye on these after-hour moves right now and see if that sentiment continues into the opening bell. But there's no doubt about it. Today was an outstanding day for the memory sector. We saw Micron break through that $1,000 barrier once again. SanDisk put up 9%. It broke through 1,800 and looked like it was going to keep climbing overall. Washington potentially strengthened the Western memory moat with their signals to Apple and the other providers not to use the Chinese memory products. And Wall Street, no question about it, is raising the long-term earning estimates for these companies. So what do we need to look for? At least what am I looking for as we head into tomorrow? There's a few things. I want to see if Micron can reclaim, now it looks like in the after hours, can it reclaim that $1,000 mark and hold it tomorrow? That'll be a key signal. Can we see, does volume remain elevated on green days? Does SanDisk consolidate constructively after this massive move we've seen last week and today, or will it keep growing? Will we keep seeing it march towards 1900 and beyond? And will we continue to see the breadth across the entire Fab 5, all five of those players, whether it's Micron, SanDisk, Western Digital, Seagate, or SK Hynix, will they continue to keep growing together? And ultimately, Will the rally continue without any major bullish headline? That last one is especially important to me because a market that rises without needing another catalyst every morning is healthier market than one that requires continuous positive news. So guys, that wraps up today's video. That is your market signal update for the day. Let me know your thoughts on what you thought about the memory sector's performance today, what you thought with Micron, SanDisk, and the others overall. And if you haven't done it already, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you subscribe to the channel, and I'll see you guys tomorrow after the close of the market. Take care. Have a great night.